pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Paul Fox.
Here.
Barbara McGinnis.
Here.
Ben Webb.
Present.
Nick Fountain.
Here.
Barry Miller.
Here.
Tim Woodrow.
I'm here.
Joe Zadlow is not present this evening. Chris Helniak.
Here.
Joe Cools.
Here.
And myself, Franco D'Angelo, am present. This time we're going to start with a public hearing we have on the agenda this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Joe Cools.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Cools. I serve as Special Solicitor to the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors on land use matters. And this evening we are conducting a public hearing pursuant to public notice, and it is on the application of 1052 Bridge Road Associates LLC for a conditional use pursuant to the Skippack Township zoning ordinance section 26F and section 156 to allow utilization of enterprise development option standards for a 6-unit attached dwelling residential land development at 1052 Bridge Road upon real property located in the township's VC Commercial with ED Overlay District designated as Montgomery County Parcel 51000002170002. This is a public hearing. You'll notice we have a stenographer with us this evening taking notes of testimony. This is a little more formal than you're probably used to in a township public meeting. I will be presiding over the hearing as the township solicitor, and the way we'll proceed is we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to present their case in chief through the presentation of witnesses. My anticipation is we most likely have 2 witnesses here with us this evening. These individuals will be sworn. They'll be providing sworn testimony, and when their testimony is complete, members of this board and any member of the audience is going to be given an opportunity at that point in time to ask questions of the witness. We're going to ask that you limit yourself at that point in time to questions of the witness, not statements. When the applicant's through with presentation of their case in chief, any member of the audience who wants to make a statement will be given an opportunity at that point in time, at the end, to be sworn themselves and to make any statement they'd like to make either in support of or in opposition to the application. As a preliminary matter, I'll mark as Township Exhibit T1 the proof of publication of this evening's public hearing. Am I speaking too fast? As Township Exhibit T2, I'll mark the affidavit of posting, and as Township Exhibit T3, I'll mark the application and all documents submitted as part of the application, and we'll leave it to the applicant to mark any additional exhibits they like. My understanding is that we have here with us this evening Mr. Marino and Mr. Jeremy Hoagland.
That's correct.
Saying your name correctly?
That's correct.
Why don't we swear both you gentlemen right now?
Do you swear or affirm that this testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And before I turn it over to you gentlemen, you can decide who's going to speak first on behalf of the application. Let me also explain to members of the audience that if the applicant is successful in obtaining an approval for the conditional use application which they're requesting, then the next step of this process would be that this proposal would move through the land development application process. So at that point in time, there'd be full reviews from township professional consultants as to stormwater, as to internal circulation, and a lot of the items you're used to hearing about in the typical land development application. But for purposes of this evening, the only thing that's really on the table and the only issue which is before this board is whether the applicant is entitled to develop this parcel in a townhome design subject to the dimensional criteria which are applicable in the enterprise development option. So with that being said, gentlemen, who's going to talk to us first? improvements which existed on the property prior to this development, correct? Which you handed up to us are 4 packets, and they're each the same packet, each packet being 2 photographs.
That is correct. One is a Google image top-down view. That is dated 2011, prior to the applicant purchasing the property. That gives a good perspective of the existing building and its proximity to Bridge Road and Creamery Road.
Okay, well then let's mark that 2 photograph packet as applicant's exhibit A5 collectively. Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable.
Okay. Mr. Hogan, if I can interrupt you one more time. You keep referring to a plan. Let's just identify that for the record. That is the plan that was submitted as part of,
That is correct.
and that is a zoning exhibit plan prepared for the Bridge Road land development
That is
by
correct.
Crossroads,
Correct.
dated November 24, 2021, without I may have missed it at the beginning of your testimony, but are you and have you reviewed the criteria in the Skippack Township zoning ordinance applicable to the conditional use which is being both the specific and the general criteria for the conditional use? That you are taking advantage of certain grandfathered dimensional criteria that were applicable to the buildings that were previously demolished, correct?
That's
Any members of the board have any questions for the witness?
I have one question. So other than the use of it being townhomes, are there other variances we're reviewing at this time that aren't related to what we grandfathered in from the previous structure? Joe, that might be
I'm sorry, you stated again.
from a standpoint of process here, other than the use of townhomes, are there any other variances being reviewed at this time, other than what's also been grandfathered in that we've already pre-approved?
There are no variances being requested by the applicant at all, as I understand it. The applicant has submitted that they are in conformance with all the applicable regulations in the township zoning ordinance, except for those dimensional setbacks which are grandfathered from the previous
Right,
demolition.
so I was like,
Going to be less coverage than what was there, if I
This-
understood correctly.
Correct.
I just have a plan question, and I may have missed it somewhere there, but, so it looks like the building will be set back, so there's no hindering of the view coming around the curve. Looks like there's more than enough parking from what I can see, but the parking that would be closer to the road, was there 2 spots that we have crossed out for some reason, or taken away, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, down to 7? For existing limits of paving?
I think the conversation, I'm sorry, I'm Tim Woodrow, the township engineer. The conversation at the planning commission was, wanted to be their assurance that the site distance as you proceeded through the 113 S bend in
Mhm.
Creamery, that landscaping or parked vehicles wouldn't impact the safety of the sight line. And so I think Mr. Hoagland, in response to those planning commission questions, was suggesting that perhaps those spaces might be lost in the land development process. Obviously, in the land development process, the new driveway and the site would need to be approved by PennDOT for a new highway occupancy permit for the development. And we'd be looking more closely at that sight line at that time.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Any other members of the board have any questions for the witness? Okay. Okay, go ahead. you have anything else that you want to testify to directly, or are you comfortable with the testimony that's been presented already? Board have any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, is there any member of the audience who would like to make a statement either in support of the application or in opposition to the application? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Hoagland, you're not an attorney. I ask for a motion to close the hearing, please.
Do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Pursuant to the municipality's planning code, the Board of Supervisors has a 45-day period in which to render a decision on this application now that the hearing has closed. And unless anyone screams out to me, I'm going to assume that the board is going to take that 45 days, and the decision on this matter will most likely be rendered at the board's next regularly scheduled meeting on
March the 9th.
okay? And that concludes the hearing.
Yes. You know what, let us have a few minutes, if you don't mind. Sure. I'm gonna step out just to review this and quick discussion, and then we'll All right, thank you, everyone. We're gonna continue on here with our meeting. At this time, we would like to take the additional time to do our due diligence, even though we don't see any negative impacts from what was explained here this evening. Just like to review it thoroughly, in case there's any conditions we would like to impose prior to moving forward toward the next step. So with that, we'll see you at the next meeting.
In Germany, they're good at time.
Thanks, Tim.
Have a good night.
Take care.
You guys aren't staying for the rest of the meeting?
You can handle it.
And we don't need to slide it anymore.
Oh, yeah, no, you're here.
Thank you.
All right. With that, this evening, we had our executive session, which we discussed potential litigation. And moving forward, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Anyone?
More with new homes going in, that's not true. It's supply and demand. The less homes you have, the more desirable area, the more valuable they're going to be. So, I mean, why wouldn't you consider purchasing a property with the open space funds?
Members of the board, before you answer that question, let me just interject for a moment. Under Pennsylvania law, there's a number of topics which a governing body such as the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors is entitled to speak about in executive session, outside the public view. And one of those topics is the acquisition of real estate. And the reason that the Pennsylvania law provides for private conversations regarding the acquisition of real estate is because this board has the power to condemn property. They have the power to come in and exercise an eminent domain and just take property. And if this board were to discuss the possibility of acquiring property by eminent domain, the argument could be made that they bought it already.
because of the devaluation effect that that public discussion would occasion. You follow me? If this board were to discuss, geez, that looks like a nice piece of property, we might want to buy that. The next day, that property owner has an arguable case that his property is being condemned already. Because how am I ever going to market this property when the public knows that a board who has the power of condemnation is discussing the possibility of buying it? So as counsel to the board, I'm going to suggest to the board that these conversations not occur. Because you stated your idea, and you obviously believe it's a good idea, and you've argued for it, and I'm sure this board will take it under consideration. But as to responding to that argument, that's dangerous ground, and I'm going to suggest that you not do that.
All right, I understand that, and the whole reason I brought it up, you know, at the meeting last week, it probably got in there, and their solicitor, I thought he was a little snippy, and I could understand why, with, all the barter going back and forth. But anyway, that really wasn't brought up last week, so that's why I wanted to bring it up, today, and that's why I wanted to look at the numbers, so
Okay.
that's fair enough.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Leslie Connor, Skippack. This isn't a question. I just wanted to make a comment that people that are trying to watch this on YouTube cannot hear the speakers, so I don't know if you still have that orange microphone.
I fixed, it was an issue with the camera itself, there should be audio now.
They hear zip.
No.
from-
Sam just said that it's
Oh,
fixed.
just now.
Yep,
Okay,
so
wonderful.
there was an
Thank
issue, I fixed it here, we should be good.
Okay, I'll update you.
Thank you, and thank you for making us aware.
Hi, I would just like, after this gentleman spoke, I would just like to say, being a 40-year resident of Skippack, I'm a little disappointed to see a large chunk of public land money spent to please a few people. And I just thought I'd make that comment. I thought.
Thank you for that comment, sir.
There was more than a few people here last week.
Yes.
Mary Myers, Skippack Traditions. Just for the record, not everyone is opposed to the development of that land. Many believe it's an eyesore, and whatever can be done to improve it will help all of us.
Thank you for that as well. Anyone else? Yes.
Yes, Tandy Cattoos, 4238 Lancaster Road. In addition to his comment, I understand that you can't respond to that, but I know that there have been other townships that have purchased different pieces of property. I think that Mermaid Lake was one of them, if I recall. So I'm not sure how that was acquired if the township can't discuss it. I'm not talking.
I didn't suggest that the property couldn't be acquired.
Okay.
I just suggested that, I'm sure in the case of Mermaid Lake, the decision was made before the public discussions began. Because once the public discussions began, the township has to be prepared to write a check. And that was my point. That until that decision is made, it's not a proper topic for public discussion because of the effect it has on the property value on a property that the township may not buy.
Right. Okay. And also too, I wanted to respond to the meeting. I had a meeting regarding the airport development the other night, and it was standing room only in this room. So there was a big turnout. I personally was disappointed by the proposal because there were a lot of questions that were deferred as to, well, we have to see what the township says or what the study recommends. So while we asked a lot of questions, they weren't able to give a lot of answers on things, which was a little frustrating.
And a lot of it is a work in progress, not
Yes.
am I correct, Joe?
Certainly.
Great. So with that, I now have more questions too than answers from that meeting, and regarding the stormwater management entrances, the safety, the traffic, the open spaces and merging parcels. And from what I heard, the developer said this was going to go through no matter what. He was a little arrogant in that respect when I felt the residents were there to ask questions, and he came off as though we had no say in anything whatsoever, and they were just going to do whatever they wanted to do anyway. And it was a little frustrating for us sitting there trying to get our views and opinions and what we thought about it. I also know.
Was anyone else in this, not that I'm not, that I'm not believing you, but anyone else in this room there? Is that,
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
his exact word is that it's not a popularity contest and it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. I mean, listen, it is true, but he was,
And he said yes.
I was being nice when I said snippy.
Yeah.
I thought he was arrogant.
okay.
And he said, we're not gonna do the road improvement various, because we
Yeah,
don't
I'm
want
gonna
to.
have Joe explain the process. He may have been correct in what he was saying, I don't know. There's a reason why we weren't at that meeting. It was for the residents, and technically, 3 of us or more should not be in the same room. Plus, we could throw off the whole process. The point of that was for the residents to be able to get their questions answered as best as possible, do their due diligence without us having any type of influence, per se. So therefore, I'll have him explain the
legalities and what technically they can, are able to do, and the township's limitations, so on and so forth. I'm not thrilled that everyone is saying that he was arrogant and snippy in the way it came across, because that should not have been how the meeting was handled. So I appreciate that, and maybe we'll give them some feedback that we don't appreciate that as a township.
I believe at one point he said he didn't need your approval correctly.
He did.
Yeah.
And then he also said that he didn't need to have, the continuational use meeting. They didn't need it. They didn't have to come here. That they would get around that for some.
Yeah, and I don't wanna take up too much time tonight.
Take up too much time tonight, because clearly it's not on the agenda, and we can't stop
Right.
business that is on the agenda. But I will have Joe touch on that, after I answer your question. This way, we kind of get the gist and can move on from the
Right.
subject, but I want to at least give you guys a good idea of how the process works.
So I just want, that it is gonna go to a planning commission and that residents will have.
Not
a
one
chance-
step will be missed.
Okay, the resident, who has to voice their opinions to you and express
Every step of
to
the way.
you what we're thinking as well as the developer.
Every step of the way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting could have been more organized, but there was a lot of shouting out, speaking over people, interrupting people, and I think anyone who was on that side would have reached a level of frustration. Because
Understood, but he's a professional nonetheless, so.
it could have been more orderly, like they tried to take questions down and back,
Gotcha.
but, you know,
Gotcha.
we as adults should not be rude and shout out.
Yes, and I appreciate both sides, and again, learning how everything went. So thank you for both points of view and how the meeting went. And yes, real quick before I turn it over to Joe, because then like I said, I'd like to move on.
Yeah, I was gonna, just Laura Hazelbarth, Skippack. They also seem to basically imply that like this is happening no matter what, there's not, and it's happening by the end of the year. So I think a lot of people were concerned that we keep being told it's not on the agenda, and they're telling us by the end of the year, this is a
I
done
mean, you'll be
deal.
able to see when it's gonna be on the agenda. Again, it's not on the agenda because they have to go through all the proper steps.
Proper steps. As they complete those steps, they will be on agendas, whether it's here, planning, zoning, what have you. But you gotta go through the steps.
And would have an opportunity to be.
Yes,
able to-
and the agenda gets advertised how much before?
At least 24 hours in advance to comply with the sunshine law.
Right, so you will see that they're gonna be on the agenda, prior to the meeting just happening and then being.
Mr. Cools, can you please give them a summary here so that we set the record straight?
Just to highlight what they have to go through, so they.
On the process,
so-
yeah.
So the concept of we can do what we want without any kind of governance is addressed.
Okay. Well, certainly not going to opine on Mr. Fry's personality. I don't have any idea what happened in that meeting, and clearly there's a consensus of opinion as to whether he behaved civilly or not. But frankly, I don't see that as really relevant to your biggest concern, which is the development of this parcel. I suspect there are things being said, particularly by a land use lawyer in a meeting like that are easy to misconstrue. I suspect that one of the things that might have been said was that this is not a popularity contest, and this is not going to be based on your feelings about this project. That's a hard thing to hear, and it's not inaccurate. Okay? This is not going to be based on a polling of how many people are for this development versus how many people are against this development and where these people live versus where these people live. It's going to be based on whether the proposal conforms or does not conform with the land development regulations of this township, period. It's a process, and they're going to move through the process. And if Mr. Fry made any statements about that process in some manner being shortcutted, that's just delusional. You know, I don't know whether he said it or he didn't say it, but I can assure you that it's totally inaccurate. This land development will proceed through a process, and it's not going to happen quickly. There are going to be review letters generated by the professional consultants of this township opining on the conformity or lack of conformity with the applicable regulations, rendering opinions as to the proper management of stormwater. There's going to be public presentations to the Planning Commission. There's going to be recommendations coming out of the Planning Commission, either in support of or in opposition to the application. And there's ultimately going to be a decision made by this board as to whether that plan conforms or does not conform with the applicable land use regulations of this township. That's what's going to govern this process. Another thing that might have been hard to hear, easily misconstrued, but not inaccurate, is that this property is going to be used. Unless it is bought, unless it turns out that it's bought by anybody who wants to preserve it. You could buy it and decide that you were going to preserve it, right? The most likely scenario is that the property is going to be developed, and that is a direct result of the fact that people are entitled to use their property. Whether there are people who happen to be developers or there are people who happen to be little old school teachers. If you own a property and you're paying taxes on it, you're entitled to use it. And that is always a competing consideration with those who would prefer it not be used. Typically the people living next door, right? Everybody wants to say what their neighbor can use their property for, but nobody wants to suffer under those same restrictions themselves. That is the seminal tension of land use law. Particularly if you've been looking at the plot next door, it's been undeveloped for the past 20 years. You want it to stay that way. It's not yours. And the person who owns it, whether that person be a little old school teacher or a big bad developer, is entitled to use it. This board is charged with determining what the scope of that use is. They do the best they can by writing zoning ordinances, and then they do the best they can by evaluating the specific proposals that come before them as to those proposals conforming or not conforming with the zoning ordinance. This is a process that's going to take months. There's going to be a lot of review letters. The review letters will be public documents. You can come take a look at the review letters. You can decide you disagree with Mr. Woodrow or a traffic consultant or me, okay? But ultimately this board is going to have to decide whose advice to listen to, and then they're going to have to decide, in their opinion, whether the proposal conforms or does not conform with applicable regulations. None of it will be done in the dark. I said to you a few moments ago that there's only a couple things that this board can discuss behind closed doors. One is the acquisition of property, actually taking ownership of property. Another one is litigation, because the law understands that we can't be discussing litigation strategy in public and then expect to actually litigate with someone. And the third thing is personnel. The law understands that we shouldn't have to discuss whether to hire or fire a township employee in public. But everything else, most importantly, approvals or denials on land development applications have to occur in public. And not just the actions, but any discussions on those topics. Any deliberations that occur by more than two of these individuals has to be in public. Two of them can have coffee and talk about it, but once a third person comes into the room, that meeting, even if it is not a meeting at which action is taken, and it is only a discussion, has to occur in public. That's one of the primary reasons that you didn't see these folks showing up at that meeting, is because once three of them get into a room, there's a problem under the Sunshine Law, because they're not going to sit there and not say anything. No human being is, right? So you don't go. You don't go to a meeting like that if you're an elected official who is ultimately going to be charged with making a decision on that application. So does that help answer your question? And do you have any questions about anything that I just said? Because I think that really covers everything, doesn't it?
More than, yeah.
Question. I know sometimes, like, especially at that meeting, I mean, the room was packed, standing room only, and it was hard to get our question answered. And I know I still have more questions. So, like, in those types of meetings, we're frustrated because we have, like, there's questions about the process in general, or stormwater, and then there's questions about our property that affects the, like, so we how do we make sure that we're heard is my biggest question. Because I understand that Chris is available and we can email him, but sometimes I feel like if I email Chris, then you guys won't be hearing that. And I think that's what
Well,
the general.
I don't know, if you want to be heard.
If you want to be heard, you can
Right.
come in and make a statement. You have your
Right.
5 minutes of public comment. If you need questions answered, you can email Chris and he'll forward it to Joe and he'll give you his professional reply so that he's answering your questions to the best of his ability. Beyond that, I mean, I would say that's the process, so that you can come here and be heard and make your statement. You can write a 5-page email and he will answer each and every one of your questions.
Okay. I'm trying to learn the process.
Those lawyers they charge by the hour, so the longer your email, the happier he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just, I'm also new to this and I just don't understand all the process. So when you said that everything has to take place in public, when you guys go and, like after this guy's finished and you guys go and have a conversation, how does that work into that everything has to be a public thing?
That was a matter of potential litigation.
Okay,
And each gentleman come forward with a conditional use application, and this board has to render a decision on that conditional use application. They typically seek legal advice as to whether I believe the applicant has satisfied the criteria in order to establish entitlement to that conditional use. I can't be giving them that advice in public.
okay, thank you. No, thank you, I just didn't understand that part.
All right, so at this time, I'd like to push forward here. Do you have something that doesn't have to do with the airport?
It'll be short. So Rob Lighty, 87 Mount Airy Road. So within the process, I think you guys had asked the previous applicant if he thought that it confirms to the standards. I just want to confirm there's some review that's done by your part that also confirms we're not just relying specifically on the applicant.
Yeah, you heard the applicant make reference to review letters from Tim Woodrow
Okay.
and from Joe Zadlow. So the township engineer has reviewed that application, and the township land planner has reviewed that application.
Okay.
And I'll be giving them legal advice.
Were those review letters public that we could also get access to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anything else that, again, has nothing to do with that matter? Okay, I see no other comments. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move forward. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as of, from January 3rd, 2022?
I'll make the motion. I will second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris, what do you have under correspondence?
Just one thing this evening is our annual letter from the Blue Collar Motorcycle Club, just letting you know of their 2022 event schedule.
Okay, thank you very much.
The, quick question. I see 2 race dates. So they're not 2 race dates, but I thought they had prep weekends prior to races.
That's a track, it should say track days.
It says trail ride days.
They are the kind of practice days.
I don't see them lining up with the actual race days. Usually they're right before as opposed to,
I don't think it's required to be right before. It's whenever they decide they can have up to.
I thought they
It's
actually
a
did
certain
the
number,
traffic
it
race.
doesn't have to be right before the actual race days, it's up to them. when they
Yeah,
have it.
did you hear Nick? Paul?
What?
The one is 2 weeks before.
Yeah, but the other one's after, so I thought they used the trail days to prep. And that's fine. If those are accurate, that's
And
fine.
is that the motorcycle or is that the mountain bike?
These are motorcycles, the mountain bikes.
Mountain bikes on a case by case.
Are they still doing that?
They did one last year, the end of last year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Good.
All right. Is that it under correspondence?
That is it.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on to administrative actions. Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report as of January 31st, 2022?
I will make that motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the interim bills paid on January 21st, 2022, which include the general fund totaling $67,166.19, the sewer fund equaling $96,320.71, and Parks and Open Space coming in at $3,383.21, as well as bills for payment today, February 9th, 2022, which include the general fund totaling $71,073.76, the sewer fund totaling $100,296, $6,636.57. And finally, Parks and Open Space equaling $6,637.59. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Reports. Tim, our engineer, what do you have for us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo. Paying some bills. Recall that our low bidding contractor for road improvements last summer was Allen Myers. Recall that they ran out of time to pave our roads before winter hit last fall. And recall that they are promising to be here first thing in the spring to deal with our roads before anything else.
Correct.
That being said, they did get in to do some work for us last fall. There is some handicap ramps, concrete work that are in the base contract that they did complete. And we also had them do a little extra work to install some drainage pipe at Carmel and Fort Bevan, kind of a poorly drained area, so we wanted to get that drainage repaired before we paved. So we owe them for both of those scopes of work and tasks. And so for the drainage work, there's an invoice in the amount of $40,175.25.
Is that the change order?
It is indeed.
Okay, thank you.
And then under the base contract, the value is $77,303.25.
Which would be their first payment request,
That
correct?
is correct.
Okay. You've reviewed everything was adequate?
Yeah,
as far
actually,
as the work they
the
did?
work was done last fall. They sent some invoices to me in like December, but I didn't see them. Well, at least I forgot about them. So
Right.
I told them I got to pay today.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I have no question about those releases.
Very good. With that, do I have a motion to approve for Allen Myers 2021 road improvement project at Fair Hills Community, payment request number 1 in the amount of $77,303.25?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now that we talked about the 2021 paving project, we can think about the 2022 paving
Can I
project.
just interrupt?
Can I do the change?
Can I get the second?
Can I do the change?
I'm sorry.
I thought you were gonna be there too.
Yes. All right, never mind.
He didn't eat dinner yet. He's trying to get home. Number 2, Allen Myers 2021 road improvement project. Do I have a motion to approve the Fair Hills Community change order number 1 totaling $40,175.25?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry, jumping
Time
the
is
gun.
yours.
But 2022. So Public Works Director Bill Parkins and I and a couple of his staff have been evaluating our roads to see what may be most important, most distressed, and where we think we need to work for this coming construction season. We are recommending to the board we pave Collegeville Road, the township portion that is, between Meeting House and Landis, and then Evansburg Road between Route 73 and Evansburg. That is a fairly long section of road, both instances.
Cracks?
And Evansburg up to Kratz, yes. And we think that just about does our budget, but I haven't completed my cost estimate yet. Once I do, and if we can get some better pricing, we might throw in a couple other roads if we think we've got some available funds.
Okay.
But if I get authorization to prepare those bid specs, go out to bid, and come back to you with the bid results, we will do that.
Sounds good. Everybody okay with that? Questions?
I'm good. What month would we get, if we authorize this, what month would we get the bids back? To be able to
Yeah,
vote
so
on?
we probably need a couple of weeks to prepare the bid specs, the bid, the advertisement and the bid processes in probably March, open, and then award in April is
Okay,
my
all right,
expectation.
thanks.
Do
Yep.
you want to go over your last item as well, Tim?
Yeah, so we have another escrow release over at the Stonegate Reserve subdivision. Recall, we hold funds in escrow until various portions of work are completed to our satisfaction, and then the developer is returned those escrow funds. This is for a lot of curb, sidewalk, and drive apron work in that project. This is the 8th escrow release for Stonegate in the amount of $43,200 to cover that work, which we have reviewed and it looks good.
Clearly you're recommending,
Yes.
okay? And is there anything left as far as reserves?
Yeah, so we had all the paving left, and I think the value, I didn't bring my spreadsheet with me.
It's okay, I don't need an exact, I don't think, unless somebody else does, but I just wanna make sure that we're sufficiently covered as far as reserves.
Here's my answer. Yeah, so we have, original value was, close to 800,000. Left in the account is $211,576.
So
When do you think they're gonna be done?
Pretty soon, those homes sold pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He got a pretty good absorption right there, and it's looking pretty good. He's got some work to do yet in final stabilization, final paving, that kind of thing. Recall in our contract with Alan Myers, we are paving the existing portion of Rosewood Circle. So that timing actually worked out pretty well. All the heavy construction is really done in Stonegate, so our paving of that road should work out pretty well with their scope as well.
Good.
Thank you. Anything else, Tim?
That's all I have for this evening.
All right, we appreciate it, thank you. With that, I'd like to make a motion to authorize to seek bids for the 2022 road improvement project. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And do I have a motion to approve the Stonegate Reserve Taggart subdivision escrow release number 8 in the amount of $43,200?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Barry, anything under your agenda this evening?
I have nothing this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I see nothing under Joe Zadlow's being reported, and he is not here this evening. So we'll move on to the manager report. Chris?
Yes, I have a few things tonight. The first, if you recall, I believe it was 2017, this board, or members of this board, who were still here, passed a earned income tax credit for qualifying volunteers of the Skippack Fire Company with the idea of helping with recruitment and retention. So each year you have to certify those qualifying volunteers so they can claim that tax credit on their local tax return. So that is the first thing, you are certifying that list as provided by the fire company's fire chief to manage. Do you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Second, I have a special event permit. It's Skippack Historical Society and Brothers Kirshner Brewing for the Stillwaters Brew Fest on June 4th, 2022 from 12 to 5 p.m. That is going to be at the 4-H Center. Next is authorization to engage Cohen Law Group to review compliance and renew Comcast Cable franchise agreement. So if you recall, we did this in the last couple of years with Verizon for their agreement and renewed that with them. Our agreement with Comcast is now coming up. So this is the same law group out of Pittsburgh, who is a consortium of communities in Montgomery County brought in to do that for us. They specialize in this kind of law. So asking authorization to engage them again as part of that consortium group to help us negotiate with Comcast to renew our franchise agreement with them. The more communities that participate in this together, the bigger discount we get from the law group. So we'll be the fifth community so far, so it's a 10% discount. The more communities, it goes up to a 25% if I think more than 15 participate. So I think we'll probably end up getting the 20% discount for between 8 and 11 municipalities.
Okay.
Last is authorization to advertise emergency services cost reimbursement ordinance. So the Skippack Fire Company and other fire companies in Pennsylvania are now permitted to charge insurance companies. I guess they could charge residents, but in this case, it would just be insurance companies when there are car accidents for certain materials they use to clean up. So this will allow the fire company to charge the insurance companies for those things that they use. They've come into an issue, the fire chief has told me, where because we don't have an ordinance on the books for this, some of the insurance companies tell them to go pound saying we're not paying you. Some pay, some don't because there's no ordinance. So this ordinance would address that and hopefully help them recoup some of their costs.
Let's fix that, shall we?
So this will authorize me to advertise that ordinance. It'll come before you at a future meeting for passage. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone have any questions for Chris regarding any of these items?
No. No, sir.
With that, do I have a motion to approve the certification of qualifying volunteers of the Skippack Fire Company?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye. Thank everybody for us, and thank you guys.
I'll make a motion to approve the special event permit for the Skippack Historical Society, Brother Kirshner's Brewing, Stillwaters Brew Fest on June 4th, 2022 from 12 to 5. Do I have a second? Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to authorize to engage the Cohen Law Group to review compliance and renew Comcast cable franchise agreement?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And finally, do I have a motion to authorize to advertise the emergency services cost reimbursement ordinance?
I will make the motion. I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And seems like Paul's happy, that was fixed.
What a crappy loophole.
Anyone have anything under old business? I see none. New business? I see none. Thank you everyone for coming out. The meeting is adjourned.